I just want to begin by saying, no matter what I say tonight, I do not have the answers. I am really, hopefully, just trying to raise questions, provoke some conversation. I inherited it from my father. I have this way of talking where it just sounds like, this is true, because I said it, it's true. But no, it's not. It's really, you got to take it all as a hypothesis, right? I'm just going to be very strongly worded hypotheses, okay? We're going to have two analytic tools. We're going to all use these tools tonight. Everybody's invited to use a tool. There's tools for everybody. Here's the first tool. First tool is feminism. But for me, feminism is a question, right? It's an analytic tool. It's literally a question you walk around with. And the question is, what truths are missing here? That's it. Then we're going to have another tool we're all going to use. It is called black girl skepticism. Now, I had a whole long definition for feminism, but black girl skepticism comes with a photo. Okay, are you ready? So remember, we're asking who's at the center, what stories are accepted as common knowledge, and how do they either reinforce or resist power? So we're going to start with who's at the center. This is the answer. Who founded the country? Washington, Jefferson, Madison, Hamilton up in there? Yes. Okay, so now we're going to ask our feminist question. What truths are missing here? Because when we think about the founding, right, do we think about, for example, the Iroquois nations, right, whose efforts were crucial to the founding, right? Because they weren't just like, well, I hope the redcoats and colonists work it out. No, they had opinions. They had thoughts. They had weapons. They had knowledge of the land. The Iroquois nations were crucial to the Revolutionary War, but we rarely talk about it. All right, this is the easy one. Who's America's greatest inventor? Thomas Edison. Light bulbs and stuff. Right, you looked up, you were like, thank you, Mr. Edison. Sure, but then what truths are missing here? So we tend to think, yes, George Washington Carver, and do not let them lie to you about this being about peanuts. This man is the father of modern agriculture, period. Now, official resistance stories. Tell me 3 important civil rights leaders. But we think about Martin Luther King, think about Rosa Parks, think about John Lewis. Now, don't get me wrong, we think about them wrong, we think about them inaccurately, but this is the official canon, right? But then what truths are missing here, right? So do we talk about Rustin? Do we talk about the queer black man? When I teach the March on Washington, I point out that the cover of Life magazine, the day after the March on Washington, who's on the cover? A. Philip Randolph and Bayard Rustin, not King. King was just the dude who gave the speech. It was a good speech, yay, speech. But he was just the guy who gave the speech. The architects of the march, the people who were on the people who mattered. But then Rustin gets written out as an unapologetically queer black man who just got pardoned. So let's then walk through what stories we think of as true and how they reinforce power. Story number 1. Oh my God, we're living in a time when the American president is racist. So here's my big question. Name 3 who weren't. And not only do we think of the other party as our opponents, we think of them as our enemies, right? We think that the other party is an actual threat to our democracy. And I don't know, maybe they are. Maybe Republicans are a threat. Maybe Democrats are a threat. But guess what? They here, they not leaving, and they're going to win half the time. You're not going to convince them with your beautiful long Facebook post, so stop it. The time when all the Democrats got along and made law with the Republicans was because the Democrats were the Dixiecrats. The reason that there was bipartisanship was because it happened over the dead bodies of black people. Cool, let's just have gridlock. Let's just have gridlock over what was the real thing that you remember as bipartisan friendliness. And so the reason that it is less bipartisan is because that's what the party looks like now. Because when a whole bunch of other people got there, the disagreements got clearer. Yeah, people were buddy-buddy, chum-chum, hanging out together. I would like us not to see each other as enemies, but I am not nostalgic for shit in America. I'm a black woman. In 2020, the Democrats will save us. Come on now. We're going to put a little black girl skepticism on that. And we're going to remember, again, one of the reasons there was so much less money in the system this time is because the single largest Democratic donor was on trial. I would never support someone who does discursive violence against a woman. Yeah, you would. Sure you would. Sure you did. I'm not trying to draw a false equivalency, because this isn't about whether or not Biden is Trump. This is about whether Republican voters and Democratic voters are the same people living in constrained circumstances where they end up casting the vote for the member of their party, who they might find egregiously awful in some ways. But what they do is they go and they vote for the member of their party. And if you think you've never done that, I bet you have. I bet you've closed your eyes to discursive violence. I bet you've closed your eyes to policy violence. I bet you've made the best choice you could in the limited circumstances you had based on the choices that were presented to you. We need stories that are aspirational, even as they tell us about our courage and connection. We need stories that keep asking what truths are missing here. I have talked in a very narrow way about a very particular group of Black folks in America, but I want to be really clear. We exist at all of these intersections. That the ways in which the checks are bouncing, the kinds of Black girl skepticism and the kinds of feminist truths that we must expand, will tell us both about our vulnerabilities and our victories, will let us have pain about a state that doesn't love us, that will let us indicate when we don't feel safe, even in our homes, our communities, and on our campuses, that will allow us to resist by telling our own stories, and that will allow us sometimes to win, to actually go ahead and win. To actually go ahead and win. That in the resistance, sometimes we actually win. Black girls are geniuses. Jumping rope is basically the very best cardiovascular exercise. You got to be together in the same space and you have to look at each other. But you're also doing the things that, by the way, guard against Alzheimer's. They guard against social isolation. All these things that we know have very real physiological benefits, right? Overall, the whole point is everybody has to look good together. The reason you and I have to communicate to get the rhythm right is we actually don't want to trip the jumper. Not only do we not want to trip her, we want to work in such a way that our jumper gets better and better. We want, in fact, maybe to even be able to get her in, have her jump, get her out, get somebody else. When we are really good at what we're doing, we're not beating anybody. You might be competing against another team, but the whole point of it is collaboration, where even if you're the turner, your job is to make it work for the other. This right here is democracy, and not just democracy, this is healthy democracy. This is what it looks like. The Black girls have figured out healthy democracy. You work together, you get in the same room, you communicate with each other, you do a little breathing, you figure out how to make each other look good. You build the Black girl magic, because that is ultimately what we're gonna have to do. This cannot just be about electability and winning and losing. This can't just be about your story. The stories we need right now have to be aspirational and they have to be collaborative. The stories we need right now tell all of our stories, all of our truths, all of our vulnerabilities, all of our victories, and they tell them in a way to ultimately bring to all of us the possibility of a great American double Dutch. Thank you.